Captain James Cook lands in New Zealand. He finds a Maori society that has lived there for generations, with organized agriculture, a complex social system, and a staple food he never expected to see: the sweet potato. Cook recognizes the plant right away, a crop that, by his time, was known to come from the Americas. He also knows something else. No European had ever documented contact between Polynesia and the Americas before Columbus. So how did the sweet potato get here? That question haunted scientists for more than 200 years, and the answer, one that's only started coming into focus in the last few decades, holds one of the most remarkable stories of human navigation ever told. This isn't just a story about a root vegetable, it's a story about human courage on an ocean with no edges. This is the history of the sweet potato. Based on recent genetic research, the sweet potato was likely domesticated somewhere in tropical America, in a broad region stretching from northern South America down through Central America. Scientists still debate the exact location, but the genetic and archaeological evidence points to this region as the starting point. That same research shows the sweet potato's closest wild relative is a species called Ipomoea trifida, found growing in Colombia and Costa Rica. This is likely where the sweet potato's domesticated lineage began. The oldest physical evidence we know of today comes from Tres Ventanas Cave in Peru. Wild sweet potato remains radiocarbon dated to roughly 8,000 years before the Common Era. But this was still a wild plant, not yet domesticated. Clearer evidence of domestication appears around 2,500 years before the Common Era, also in Peru. By this point, the sweet potato is believed to have become a routine part of Andean agriculture. Here's the interesting part: the way they grew it. Unlike wheat or rice, which grow from seed, sweet potatoes grow from stem cuttings. Cut the vine, plant it in the ground, and it grows into a new plant that's genetically identical to its parent. Ancient farmers in Mesoamerica figured out something brilliant about this method. Every new plant had the exact same taste, texture, and size as the one before it. No surprises, no unwanted variation. This was genetic cloning, thousands of years before humans had a word for it. And this method is exactly what allowed the sweet potato to spread so quickly across tropical America. This is the part that's kept historians, archaeologists, and geneticists up at night for centuries. Based on radiocarbon dating, the sweet potato was likely already present in the Cook Islands around the year 1100, though some archaeologists still debate the precision of that date. Long before Columbus, long before Vasco da Gama, long before European exploration even began, the sweet potato was already there, and not just present. It was already an established crop, grown within an organized agricultural system. This wasn't a plant that had just arrived. This was a plant with roots already sunk deep. From the Cook Islands, similar evidence turns up in Hawaii, estimated to date between 1290 and 1430. On Easter Island, around 1525. In New Zealand, before Cook ever set foot there. All across Polynesia, from one end to the other, the sweet potato was everywhere. A plant whose origins lay on the coast of South America, thousands of kilometers across the widest ocean on Earth. How? There are three leading theories. Theory 1, migratory birds. The golden plover, a shorebird, regularly migrates from North America to Hawaii and other Pacific islands. Some scientists once hypothesized that sweet potato seeds eaten by these birds could survive the trip through their digestive systems and drop somewhere in the Pacific. It's a biologically interesting idea, but there's a major problem. Sweet potatoes almost never reproduce from seed. They grow from stem cuttings. Sweet potato seeds are rare, and when they do form, they're rarely fertile. Because of this, most scientists today consider this theory too weak to hold up. Theory 2, ocean drift. Sweet potato tubers can float in seawater for weeks without rotting. One possibility is that tubers simply drifted on ocean currents from the coast of South America to Polynesia. Computer simulations using Pacific Ocean currents and winds suggest that a drifting journey from the coast of South America to Polynesia could take about 80 to 120 days. A study published in Quaternary Science Reviews in 2022 found that sweet potato seeds could remain viable after that much time in seawater. But there's a similar problem here. A tuber that drifts ashore on its own can't turn itself into an organized farming system. Someone had to find it, recognize it as food, and choose to plant it deliberately. Theory 3. Human contact. This is the most striking theory, and the one with the most evidence behind it. Polynesian navigators were some of the greatest sailors the world has ever known, long before the modern era. Using double-hulled canoes called waka hurua, they crossed the Pacific relying on knowledge passed down for generations. The stars, ocean currents, wind patterns, even the color of the water. They had already settled Hawaii, New Zealand, and Easter Island, some of the most remote points in the entire Pacific, long before any European sailor dared to leave sight of shore. Easter Island is the closest point between Polynesia and South America, roughly 3,700 kilometers away. That's an enormous distance by modern standards. But for navigators already used to sailing thousands of kilometers across open ocean? Not impossible at all. Linguistic evidence backs up this theory in a way that's hard to dismiss. The word for sweet potato in Quechua, the native language of the Andes, is kumar, often transliterated as kumara. A nearly identical word shows up across Polynesia: kumara in New Zealand, kumara in the Cook Islands, uwala in Hawaii. A linguistic match like this doesn't happen by accident. Words only travel when people travel. Genetic research published in the journal Nature in 2020, led by Alexander Ioannidis at Stanford University, provides the strongest evidence yet. DNA analysis of more than 800 individuals across Polynesian and American populations found genetic contributions from a South American population, specifically a group most closely related to present-day indigenous peoples of Colombia, dating to around the year 1200. The evidence keeps pointing to one conclusion: Polynesians and South Americans made contact. They likely met. They may have exchanged knowledge, technology, or plants. And one of the clearest legacies of that encounter is the sweet potato, which then spread across all of Polynesia. The Pacific Ocean wasn't a barrier, it was a highway. After Columbus, the sweet potato began its second global journey, this time through European colonial trade routes. And, unlike the potato, which was met with suspicion in Europe for nearly 2 centuries, the sweet potato was accepted far more quickly. There's a botanical reason for that difference. The potato belongs to the nightshade family, Solanaceae, the same family as belladonna, a plant so poisonous it had been feared in Europe for generations. To many 16th century Europeans, that resemblance alone was enough to raise suspicion. They assumed the potato was poisonous, or at least dangerous to eat. The sweet potato didn't carry that baggage. It comes from a completely different plant family, Convolvulacea, related to the morning glory. No association with poison, no inherited suspicion. The real reason it caught on so quickly was much simpler. It tasted sweet. In a world where sugar was still a luxury only the wealthy could afford, anything naturally sweet was an instant draw. European nobility served sweet potatoes as a delicacy, often prepared with spices and sugar. King Henry VIII of England was famously fond of spiced sweet potato pie, a luxury dish also believed at the time to have aphrodisiac qualities. From Europe, the sweet potato spread to Africa through Portuguese trade routes in the 1500s. In Africa, it found near-perfect conditions: hot climates, poor soil, and unreliable rainfall. The sweet potato thrived there. In Asia, it arrived through two separate routes, one through Portuguese traders, the other through Chinese trade networks. It reached China in the late 1500s, and what happened next was dramatic. Late 16th century China was in crisis. The Ming dynasty was beginning to falter. A growing population was straining food production to its limits. Floods and droughts alternated, wrecking rice harvests along the river valleys. Famine was a constant threat. Then the sweet potato arrived, and it did something rice simply couldn't do. It grew on dry hillsides, in poor soil, in places no rice paddy irrigation system could ever reach. But there was a deeper reason behind its success. One that explains why it was so capable of supporting a population on the edge of collapse. The sweet potato produces an extraordinary amount of calories for every hectare of land, and in far less time than rice or wheat. According to average global data from the FAO, 1 hectare of sweet potatoes can produce roughly 70,000 calories per day, nearly double what wheat produces on the same land, though the exact figure varies depending on variety and soil conditions. This wasn't just a hardy crop. It was a plant that could turn a patch of poor soil into a far greater source of energy than anyone had reason to expect. For a China running out of fertile land and running out of time, this was the perfect combination. Farmers who had no access to rice paddies suddenly had options. They planted sweet potatoes on hillsides that used to be worthless, along roadsides, in their own backyards. The impact was immediate. Historical records from the late Ming and early Qing dynasties describe the sweet potato becoming what official government documents literally called a life-saving crop during the worst periods of famine. According to the most widely accepted historical account, a Fujian merchant named Chen Zhenlong smuggled sweet potato cuttings out of Luzon in the Philippines into Fujian in 1593, evading strict Spanish colonial regulations. A year later, during a severe drought in Fujian, his son convinced the local governor to distribute the cuttings across the region. Other accounts point to different points of entry, through Vietnam or through Yunnan, but the story of Chen Zhenlong remains the most widely accepted version in Chinese history. Within a few decades, the sweet potato had spread across all of China. Based on economic historical research, the sweet potato, alongside corn and the white potato, is believed to have been one important factor behind China's population surge, from roughly 150 million people in the late 1600s to more than 400 million by the mid-1800s. Historians are careful to call this one factor among several, not the sole cause. Agricultural reform, political stability, and other elements played a role too. But it's hard to imagine that kind of growth happening on rice and wheat alone. There's a deep irony in the sweet potato's story. For centuries, it was seen as a poor person's food, an emergency food, something people ate when they had no better option. But nutritionally speaking, the sweet potato is one of the richest crops humans have ever domesticated. One medium sweet potato contains more than 4 times the daily recommended intake of vitamin A in the form of beta-carotene, the orange pigment the body converts into vitamin A. It's rich in vitamin C, manganese, potassium, and fiber. Its glycemic index is lower than a regular potato's, meaning it doesn't cause the same sharp spike in blood sugar. In one nutritional ranking by the Center for Science in the Public Interest, a public health advocacy organization, the sweet potato ranked at the very top among commonly eaten vegetables for overall nutritional value. And here's a fact about sweet potatoes that tends to catch people off guard. The people of Okinawa, Japan, known for having some of the highest life expectancy and lowest rates of chronic disease anywhere in the world, traditionally made purple sweet potato their primary staple food. Not rice. Not bread. Sweet potato. The reason turns out to be surprisingly practical. Sweet potatoes arrived in Okinawa from China in the early 1600s, around the same time they were helping mainland China survive its own famines. Okinawa is regularly hit by typhoons that destroy rice crops, Sweet potatoes, which grow underground and resist strong winds, survived when other crops failed. According to historical dietary records, for most of the 20th century, more than 60% of the average Okinawan's daily calories came from this single crop. What began as a survival strategy against natural disaster eventually became one of the most famous longevity secrets in the world. Researchers who study blue zones, regions where people consistently live the longest, healthiest lives, have repeatedly found sweet potatoes as a core part of the local diet. This is an association, not proof of direct cause and effect. Longevity in these regions is likely shaped by lifestyle, social, and genetic factors as well. A crop once dismissed as poor people's food turns out to be one of the healthiest things a human being can eat. Today, the sweet potato is the 7th most important food crop in the world by production volume. China remains, to this day, the world's largest sweet potato producer. For decades, it has accounted for more than half of global production, a reflection of just how deep the relationship runs between China and the crop that helped sustain its food security for the last 4 centuries. In sub-Saharan Africa, programs promoting orange-fleshed sweet potatoes, which are rich in beta-carotene, have become one of the most effective health interventions for addressing vitamin A deficiency in children. More than 10 million households across Africa have already adopted them. In the United States, sweet potatoes have seen a remarkable surge in popularity over the past 2 decades, driven by health food trends and plant-based diets. In Japan, purple Okinawan sweet potato has become the foundation of one of the fastest-growing functional food industries in the country. But there's a threat on the horizon. Based on current scientific projections, climate change could put the tropical regions that have long served as sweet potato strongholds at risk. Rising temperatures, increasingly unpredictable rainfall, and new pests thriving in warmer climates all pose potential risks to future production. And like every staple crop we've covered in this series, the sweet potato's genetic diversity is under threat too. Of the thousands of local varieties once cultivated across South America, Africa, and Asia, more and more are being replaced by uniform commercial varieties. The knowledge of how to grow, tend, and prepare those local varieties, built up over thousands of years, is quietly disappearing, along with the generation of older farmers who never had the chance to pass it on. Let's return to the question that opened this episode. How did the sweet potato end up in Polynesia before Columbus ever set sail? DNA research from 2020 gives us the strongest evidence yet. Polynesians and South Americans likely made contact around the year 1200. Scientists still debate the details, which direction people sailed, who traveled to whom, but the DNA evidence keeps pointing to one conclusion. They met, and the sweet potato is one of the clearest traces left behind from that meeting. But this opens up a much bigger question. If Polynesian navigators could sail from Polynesia to South America and back, using the boat technology and navigation knowledge available in the 12th century, what else did they do that we still don't know about? What other exchanges happened across the Pacific Ocean that left no written record? What knowledge changed hands during meetings out on the open sea, with no European witness to write it down? Human history is far more connected than most of us were ever taught in school. The sweet potato is the proof. A small root vegetable that crossed the widest ocean on Earth, most likely carried by brave Polynesian navigators crossing the Pacific, though some of the details are still debated by scientists. And everywhere it landed, it fed people, helped sustain civilizations, and left a trail we can still follow today. 10,000 years ago, someone in tropical America dug a wild root out of the ground and started a long process that eventually gave rise to a cultivated crop. From that process came a plant that crossed the widest ocean on the planet. Somehow, centuries before anyone believed that was even possible. A crop that helped China survive its darkest famines. That fed Africa in some of its poorest soil. That today has proven to be one of the most nutritious foods a human being can eat. And one that still holds a mystery we haven't fully solved. The sweet potato teaches us that human beings have been connected to each other for far longer and far more deeply than we ever imagined. That the ocean was never a divider, it was a connector. That knowledge, like a seed, always finds a way to travel and take root somewhere new. And that even the humblest plant can hold a history far richer than it appears on the surface.